We've got a short period, so we'll just dive right in. Rocketfuel went from founding to $1 billion IPO in 5 years, and it's one of the only 15 unicorns in the enterprise space, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And then last year, the year you went public, you doubled your headcount again. So the question is, when you founded the company, what were you thinking about in terms of how you were going to grow?
I guess a few heuristics. We really, I suppose as any entrepreneur would, we believed very strongly and passionately in our approach of bringing technology to advertising, big data and artificial intelligence, and we thought it would be big. I guess we, in terms of the way we managed the company though, in the early days, we talked to Steve Blank about, and Eric Ries about the lean startup approach, so we were somewhat cautious and experimental about precisely how to enter the market. But things sort of caught on fairly quickly. My own experience in pre-IPO companies was working at Epiphany as a very early employee and Salesforce.com, and those both went public and worked well. Tim Galleri mentioned selling a company for $3 billion. It was Epiphany that bought it. My own experience with private companies has only been a public exit, and it felt like what we were doing was very much meaningful enough to warrant that for Rocketfuel too.
So talk to me about the engineering group especially. How did you grow engineering to keep up with the requirements?
We wanted to make sure we are getting the best talent in the company, and at the same time getting people who are honest and down to earth. The way we describe our culture is nerdy but lovable. So early days I reached out to a lot of my colleagues and friends I had worked with in the past, and also we came up with interview strategies to make sure we have a very high hiring bar, and we have continued to do that to this day.
So talk about the hiring bar for a moment. So growing that quickly and maintaining extremely high level of quality, what steps did you put in place other than a very high bar? It
definitely helped that we were working on very interesting and challenging problems. And this meant the kind of people who would be interested in coming to Rocketfuel already were very good. And beyond that, it was our interview process, reference checks, and doing actually some real-world problem solving during the interviews.
So George, outside of engineering, how did you maintain the culture and the quality?
So part of quality is sort of how wide is the funnel and how attractive are you, and can you think about, for different functions, what's kind of the sales pitch of the company, because we're selling you a career for hopefully 4 or more years. So we thought very deliberately about that, and as you begin to be successful in the market, it's very nice because people who hear about the buzz, the customers want to come work for you, competitors want to come work for you. So that part's great, and then for filtering, I think we found we would often fall in love with a candidate too early, and then we would get to the reference checks, and by that point we didn't even care what they had to say. So we tried to push the reference checking earlier because obviously if you can hear from their prior colleagues, it's quite valuable. In terms of culture, we're very overt. There's a lot of legends that we tell over and over again. It's like there's Grandpa, telling his story about going to school through the snow. There's a lot of stories like that in Rocketfuel about just what a high standard we have for ourselves, but not just the harsh culture, but also the lovable part. We retell stories about the time somebody thanked Joe for doing an excellent job, but he said no, it was really Bob. That kind of thing. So that's part of it is the legends, and part of it is also just doing new hire orientation. We spend a full week with new hires going through training. We talk to them about founding stories of the company and very early examples of how this culture has helped us succeed and why they should understand it and live by it inside the company. So looking back, is there anything you do differently? Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that you do in the early days when you just don't know, right? It's, I think from the Steve Blank school of thought, I mean, the startup is really an experiment. It's you have a hypothesis that if you built this thing, people would buy it and life would be awesome. So you don't know though, and so there's a lot of things we did early on that were sort of more tentative. We talked before about one of my mantras was don't hire to plan, hire to pain, meaning even if you had a plan to hire people at a certain track, like if you didn't feel overworked in a certain area in the early days, well, don't hire yet because we don't know that we really need that person yet. So there were a number of things we did in the early days that were sort of tentative, that going back, if you knew that just a few years later you'd be worth $1 billion, you would have just made the investments. But you never really know. You never know how the economy might change, how much runway your current funding really needs to last for. So at the time they were good decisions, but going back I'd do it differently.
I mean, I would love to hear your point of view. George just told us that the hire to pain issue, you felt the pain. So any other, I do it differently now that I know.
Of course, looking back, since we ended up doing well, you feel you were hiring faster, right? But I guess another theme we had was think big, start small, move fast. And again, this meant that we need to be really hyper-focused in the early days and focus on execution speed, because if we're moving fast, we only need to be 80% right, and we have time to correct ourselves later. Yeah, I can't think of anything in particular that I'll do differently, but if I think more on the tech side, I'll probably take a more API-driven approach in some of the systems we've built. This becomes more apparent when you become bigger and you have lots of customers.
So you're at a nice spot now. I'm sure you have plans for your future growth. What can you share?
Well, we're very excited about the core of what we built. It seems like if you can manage massive amounts of data for your customers and having this artificial intelligence engine that can scour through that data, looking for patterns that it can use and making decisions for them, that's kind of a big deal. And right now we're applying that in paid media buying through web display ads, social, mobile, and video. Going forward, I think there's so much more we could do if we had tighter kind of enterprise integrations with some of our customers, and we're working on that now with several. So that's one feature, is just becoming more integrated as a technology partner than an advertising partner, which is where we started. There's another theme for us around getting real. In our world, advertisers have lots of different ways of measuring how well we're doing for them, how well Google is doing, or Yahoo, and helping them understand better ways of testing. We feel is a catalyst for us to grow faster, because if they can run clean, test and control experiments, this is what life looks with and without Rocketfuel. We often look much better when they do that than when they use their kind of old methods, and so that's another catalyst for growth for us that we're very excited about. And beyond that, within the core of AI, you can imagine there's just teams that are always backtesting new strategies and new algorithms, and so it's a pretty exciting business in the sense that almost like a hedge fund. If the algorithm gets 10% better, I mean, life gets 10% better. You don't have to wait for a brochure to get printed up and salespeople to deliver that to customers. It immediately starts to succeed, and that generates better results for our customers, or more net profits for us.
So I'm sure you'll succeed in many, if not all of those. How are you planning the growth of the people and the infrastructure to match the growth in your business?
So I'll mention generally, maybe Abhinav can speak about on the tech side. Actually, one of the things we didn't invest in much early on was systems. So it's silly. We have this AI engine that just autonomously does things, but meanwhile, there's so many processes elsewhere in the company where there's people filling out forms, and so there's actually a lot of systems and tools to put in place. And we've just lately built out sort of the HR function, CIO function to begin doing that. So that's part of it. The rest of scale, I think. It's mostly around kind of not losing what made us successful so far, which was, as Abhinav mentioned, if you're moving fast and you're agile in the sense of not just developing, but also sensing what the market wants. So if we could just not lose that, as our own industry is quite dynamic in terms of what's exciting to marketers at any point in time. So one of our focus areas is actually making sure certain feedback loops, it was okay if news had to travel to me or our president and then back down, but as a big company, that's too long of a feedback cycle. So we're trying to create smaller, more localized feedback cycles so we can sense and respond to the market faster.
How are you managing?
Scaling as a company means scaling revenues, growing teams, and at the same time also optimizing our costs. So for scaling revenues, we are investing in software and putting in processes that make it very seamless and efficient for our customers to grow on our platform. This means, not just the big data and AI technologies, but also a lot of automation in workflows and diagnostic tools. We are hiring fast, having an awesome new hire orientation and boot camp also enables the new people to become Rocketfuel-y and productive sooner. This part about optimizing costs, so we are spending a lot of time in figuring out opportunities where we can be more efficient as a company. It could be either more efficient software, it could be better use of Amazon Web Services, or it could also be the APIs between various functions of the company in terms of how they operate.
So a lot of us, myself included, a lot in the audience are at the spot where you were 5 years ago. What advice do you have, specifically in terms of how do you plan for growth?
Let's see. Well, at Rocketfuel, we pretty early on, we built a pretty detailed model that maybe you would really only find inside a fairly big company that tried to model, here's how investments in sales and other functions seem to drive revenues. And having that model, if you look at Rocketfuel versus our competitors, there's a point at which we were all kind of growing along, and all of a sudden we just started to race ahead. And what was really happening there was we trusted our model about our business to make, when it started to look like everything was really working very nicely from a product and market fit, we just floored it, and the model said it would be okay. I mean, it's a little scary because in a given quarter or two, it looks like you're spending money like crazy, but don't worry, the model says here's how sales reps scale in productivity, or how customers spend more over time as the results are excellent, and that gave us the faith to really significantly double down, or more than that, on our own business, and that was really what kind of separated us, at least in business metrics, revenues, from our competitors. And I think but it was only with the sort of the faith the market tested, and I guess not faith, but more of a theorem at that point that was proved that the market loved what we had built, and all we needed to do was just get it out more.
So if I could repeat back something that you told me about a week ago, you were conservative until you knew you had product market fit, and then you hit the gas.
Exactly.
Okay. Abhinav, advice to?
Yeah, we had a culture of optimization from very early on. This meant that things would go bad, right? So we would do retrospective on that. We will come up with learnings, share those learnings, and enable everyone to become better from that. So having that honest approach to yourself, to your colleagues, as well as to your customers could be extremely helpful in scaling and growing.
One thought occurs, if you don't mind. It was almost like with Rocketfuel, a lot of our customers and new employees, when we would ask them about the company, they would say, I believe in it. And it almost was a cause for them. There's this notion that you could fully automate the process that we were, because a lot of people didn't believe. And that belief created this loyalty and dedication, both from our customers and employees, that I really feel more of our success than we've spoken about today is just a lot of hard work. I mean, people really were knocking themselves out. I joke that our sales and service teams, I feel they would throw themselves in front of oncoming traffic to save a customer. And the engineers are the same about keeping systems alive and doing whatever it takes. So there's something about the broader theme of what we were doing here around deploying AI in a very significant way that really allowed us to attract a lot of people who were very excited by that vision.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right.